You can't miss it, and it's all around you. We live in a world where everything demands our attention. Things like politics, the economy, social justice debates, immigration, culture wars. There's no shortage of endless opinions online. Now, for whatever reason, I get it. I think it's a good thing to try to stay informed with the events that are happening around us. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm sure you'll notice something subtle. We begin to believe that if we just understand enough, that will make us feel secure. And because we want to feel secure, we chase knowledge. We saturate ourselves with things like the news, podcasts, threads, debates, but somehow, and I'm pretty sure you've noticed it in other people and yourself included, the more information we consume, the more anxious we feel. Why is that? Well, as a discerning disciple, how do we identify this? But even more, how do we make sense of this? And that's what I'm going to show you today. And Scripture actually explains why. Hey, I'm Lonnie and Lara, and this is Discerning Disciple, where we study Scripture, seek wisdom, strengthen discernment, and stand firm in today's culture, all for the glory of God. If you care about building that kind of discernment, well, consider subscribing. Okay, so with our best intentions, we try to stay informed, but in the end, we become even more anxious. I want to show, this is going to be our main verse today, Hosea 4, verse 6. And it says this, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." Okay, let's take a moment here because this verse can often be misunderstood. God is not saying people need to know or have more information. What God is saying is that his people are missing something far deeper. Now, to give you the context of the book of Hosea, this is what's going on. Okay, Israel was going through a turbulent time again, right? But they were prosperous, but they rejected God. But since they were rejecting God in that moment, things were not going too well, which led them to worship other gods like Baal. There was political instability. There was social corruption, moral decay. Even their priests were failing their own people. Does any of this sound familiar? Israel had religious activity. They had priests, rituals, traditions. But where it counted, they abandoned the true knowledge of God. They knew about God, but they didn't know God. So as we see here, the problem wasn't knowledge or intelligence. The problem was rejection. Let's do a real quick recap from verse 1 so you can see where this leads up to. Verse 1. "Listen to the word of the Lord, O sons of Israel, for the Lord has a case against the inhabitants of the land." Notice the language here. God is bringing a case against his own people. Why? Because there is no faithfulness or kindness or knowledge of God in the land. That's a case. There is swearing, deception, murder, stealing, and adultery. They employ violence so that bloodshed follows bloodshed. Therefore the land mourns, and everyone who lives in it languishes, along with the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky, and also the fish of the sea disappear. So now we start seeing the negative effects of not knowing God and what it's led to. Moral decay. Let's continue. "Yet let no one find fault, and let none offer reproof, for your people are like those who contend with priests." This is a harsh accusation because the priests in the land of Israel were supposed to help the people, but the people are like, "No, priests, we don't want to listen to you." But it gets even worse. "So you will stumble by day, and the prophet also will stumble with you by night, and I will destroy your mother." So it seems here that the priests, they weren't doing their job either. They weren't being listened to, and they were just failing as priests. And then it leads into verse 6. "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge," and it continues, "because you have rejected knowledge, I also reject you as my priests." So we see here that the issue, it was not ignorance. It was that the people, Israel, they were choosing other things over knowing God. And again, we see the downstream effects of that in Scripture. So we have to ask ourselves, what does knowledge mean in this passage? Well, in Scripture, knowledge often means something deeper than intellect. And we know that there are two kinds of intellect, right? There's intellectual knowledge, information, facts, analysis. Because we live in an information age, people love that kind of knowledge. But there's also relational knowledge, knowing God, walking with Him, trusting Him, our covenantal relationship that Israel had with Him and that we have with Him as well. The Hebrew concept of knowledge is relational. It means deep, lived understanding through relationship. So we see Hosea saying is that God's people, they were chasing everything else except the one who would give them peace. And again, we see the moral decay that the nation was falling into. Now, why is this still happening today? Well, we often chase knowledge for security, not truth. What do I mean by that? We make security an idol in our lives, and then we'll worship it, meaning we make it the highest importance in our lives. We think, if I just understand politics better, I'll feel secure. If I understand the economy better, I'll feel secure. If I understand culture better, I'll feel secure. Here's the thing. Educating yourself is not the issue. But there's a problem. We're not designed to know everything. And emotionally, we don't know what to do with that limitation. Social media, speed of information. We have access to the entire world right here. Do you understand this is a first for mankind or people in the history of the world? We never had so much access to information, and we don't know how to emotionally deal with that. Where to put that, compartmentalize. And to be honestly, so much information can make us feel fearful, not safe, not secure. And in order to feel secure, well, we eventually settle on a side, a philosophy. There's different religions, right? We worship different things. Because it makes us feel secure. Not that it's true, because it just makes us feel secure. Now, here's the thing. When we pick something that makes us feel secure, and then when our understanding gets challenged, well, then we panic. And instead of pursuing truth, we cling on to whatever belief makes us feel safe. Now, again, whatever we cling on to, it doesn't mean it's true. It's just we've invested ourselves into it. Therefore, we hold on to it. So, because the motivation is to feel secure, it's not about truth. It's about security. And here's the kicker. Everyone else is doing the same exact thing. So when two people's securities collide, that's where conflict explodes. So what is God revealing to us here? Because it happened then and it's still happening now. Well, Hosea exposes something very important. We see here that God is actually revealing our limitations. Again, human intellect does have value, but it was never meant to carry the weight of our peace. Here's the thing. We're not primarily intellectual beings. We're relational beings. Same as God is an intellectual being, we are instinctually, naturally, by design by God, a relational being. Peace comes from knowing God, not from knowing everything. And the danger? Well, sometimes we want to know or have a relationship with everything else but God. And the deeper truth is, you can know a lot about someone without truly knowing them at all. And the same is true with God. You can study theology, you can debate scripture, you can learn doctrine. But the peace Scripture speaks about comes from a relationship with God Himself. And that kind of knowledge will always anchor you. That knowledge grounds you, even when the world feels chaotic. All right. So, as a discerning disciple, what does this mean for us? Well, it means we stop trying to build peace on perfect understanding of the world. And instead, we build our peace on knowing God. Now, I know it sounds simple, but it's the truth. Sometimes we want God and then some. Because when you know Him, God, you don't need to know everything. His word becomes your foundation. His character becomes your security. And even when life raises questions you can't answer, you remain grounded. So, Hosea 4:6, it's not just a warning. It's an invitation. Don't reject the knowledge of God while chasing knowledge that can never be satisfying. But only knowing God can steady your soul. So, as the world gets louder and probably seems scarier, we don't need to put our security in knowing more about the world. We need to be grounded in our knowledge of God. We need to think clearly. We need to stand in truth even when it's costly, because discernment isn't reaction. It's alignment with what God has already said. All right, until next time, friends, stay grounded in Scripture, think clearly, and stand in truth. Hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like, subscribe, and also if you feel that this video may bless someone else, please share it as well. I'll see you next one.